This is the age of the spy. We live in a world of computer fraud, global terrorism, organised crime. Our weapons are intelligence and information.
The spy is a secret weapon of the intelligence service, getting right in amongst the enemy, living their lives, knowing their friends, living in their homes.
The Oxbridge-Harvard mold has been broken. It's not your father's intelligence service anymore. You'd be surprised at the sort of people that are involved in spying. Younger, wider variety of backgrounds. There's new threats, new dangers, new concerns. We need a new type of spy.
Over 5,000 people applied for the chance to glimpse inside the notoriously secretive world of spying. 500 went through a vetting process based on tests used by the real intelligence services.
The raw recruits are the best of the lot in terms of raw potential, but they need to be tested right from the start. Learning to be a spy has to be done in the real world.
It's run by 3 former spies. Mike Baker, CIA. Sandy Williams, intelligence officer, appearing in disguise to protect her identity. And Harry Ferguson, MI6.
Classified recruit activation briefing.
You've been selected for our spy training course.
You're now required to leave your present life behind,
adopt a new identity and move to our secret training location.
Contact with your family and friends will be limited to 1 confidant.
You will look to create a credible cover story to explain your absence to everyone else.
Do not communicate any details about your training to anyone,
with the exception of your chosen confidant.
Spies can never fully reveal the nature of their work to those around them. The same is true for the recruits. Real spies can say they're working for the civil service. The recruits are using trips abroad or career training as cover. Like genuine intelligence officers, they're only allowed to tell one person, their confidant, what they're really doing.
I will do, and you?
And enjoy.
I will, as you see.
Right from the start, the recruits must maintain multiple identities. As well as the cover stories they've used with everyone they've left behind, they've also been assigned a temporary identity, known as a snap cover. Under no circumstances must they reveal anything about their real lives.
So far, Rena's the only one who does not check in using her home address. A briefcase containing some important kit for them is delivered to each of their rooms, but they're supposed to sign under their cover name, yet the individual delivering the briefcases is using their real name.
All recruits eventually receive their briefcase, containing equipment that will prove essential over the coming weeks. Like real spies, the recruits will be trained in an urban environment where they can practice their spy tradecraft in anonymity, moving unseen amongst the crowd. The recruits know nothing about spy school and nothing about the other people they find here.
We are deliberately keeping the recruits in a state of uncertainty, disorientation, because this makes them vulnerable. It's only natural that they should want to bond together, seek assurances from one another, but that's when they're likely to break their cover.
When assuming a new identity, a spy must make sure that nothing in their possession bears their real name. The recruits' bags have been taken from their hotel rooms. Tutor Harry Ferguson is searching them for incriminating evidence.
When a spy is working undercover, everything has to be consistent with that cover. The contents of his pocket, the contents of his wallet, the contents of his bags. A spy working undercover can't afford to make even the smallest mistake, because one day that could be the mistake that costs his life.
The initial tests are over. It's time for the recruits to meet their 3 tutors. Over the next 2 months, they will be teaching them, testing them, and pushing them to their limit.
Morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, finally, to the Spy Training School. Now, this course is going to be tough. It's going to be as realistic as we can make it. It's designed to put you under pressure. It's designed to stress you out. We're trying to break you. My name is Harry. I'm a former MI6 officer. I'll be responsible for your training in skills such as counter-espionage, intelligence analysis, surveillance, counter-surveillance, agent recruitment, agent handling. Now, this course that you're on has been designed based on the experience of officers from a range of different services, from MI5, MI6, CIA, KGB, there are a lot of those guys around these days, and even from services such as Mossad. All the missions, all the exercises that you're going to go on are real, authentic missions and exercises that are used on normal training courses. I want to tell you what you will learn and what you won't learn on this course. What you're not going to learn is anything to do with guns, bombs, knives. If a spy gets to that situation, then it's probably too late anyway. You're not going to learn how to defuse a nuclear device in a gold bullion vault with just a few seconds left on the clock. You're not going to learn how to abseil down the side of a building and deliver a box of chocolates to some tart in a nightie. What you are going to learn is how to manipulate other people, how to script their lives without them knowing so they'll do what you want them to do. You're going to learn to lie, hopefully by the end of this course, without being caught. To watch others without them knowing that you're watching them. And to know when you're being watched.
My name's Mike. And I spent over a decade and a half with the CIA as a covert operations officer. You don't have to like me. And frankly, that's neither my job nor really my concern. While you don't have to like us, you probably ought to look around at each other. And you probably ought to figure out how to work with each other. Spying is a team sport. And whether your team is the people immediately involved in your operation, or whether the team is your organization, or whether it's your country, you're doing this for something bigger and better than yourself. So if you're an individualist and you really don't give a crap about anybody else, then that's going to show out pretty quick. So you got to keep that in mind.
So, how are you guys feeling? Some of you have done really badly. You were given a cover name, a job, everything you needed. And what did you do? At the very first hurdle, you cracked. I stood there and listened to you guys giving your real names, your real families, where you live, what you do. Don't you understand that to become a spy, you have to change? You become a new person, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You have to create a story, a family, a home, so that when people ask you a question, you don't say nothing. You have to clear everything away. No photographs, no letters, no diaries. You have a photograph of your family in your bag, and it gets into the wrong hands. What do you think might happen to them?
Your mission, when you're told, will be to go to that premises and to persuade the owner of the premises to give you admission. You can come up with any cover story you like, but you'll have no props, no money, nothing. This is purely based on your powers of persuasion. Sounds difficult, doesn't it? But this is an authentic mission, based on one used by Mossad, the Israeli intelligence service. And their guys are good. This is purely an exercise in persuasion, not in karate. So you're to use no force, you're to use no threatening words or behavior.
After an exhausting and stressful first day, the recruits are being sent to 3 safe houses, anonymous suburban homes where they will live for the next 2 months, blending in without drawing attention to themselves or their covert activities. After being on the go for over 19 hours, the recruits turn in, looking forward to a good night's sleep. recruits are about to learn their first real lesson. Everybody has their breaking point. Even the most strong-willed spy can ultimately break under pressure. Without this knowledge, being interrogated in the real world can be psychologically devastating.
Intelligence agencies all over the world work in some pretty rough places, and agents can be picked up just because their cover is weak or they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. You have to know what it's like to be interrogated. You have to be trained for that so that you don't crack, so that you don't give anything away.
These operatives are all professional interrogators. They are trained in the intelligence techniques of extracting information from enemy agents. The recruits will have to survive a night of unrelenting questioning, physical discomfort, and psychological disorientation.
Do you not like talking to me? Stand up! Go on, get out!
But real spies on covert missions don't officially exist and do not have this protection. If they are captured and interrogated, they must be prepared for the worst.
You're all that's left. Oh. Give me a hand, well done. Sorry.
Seals is... can't even speak. Seals...
Oh, you are ashamed? Yeah, that's a shame. Put the hood on, turn around, face the wall.
Switching to a friendly approach is another standard psychological technique used by interrogators.
Last night was not about being tough. Because, believe me, these guys, they could have cracked you inside of 2 minutes. Nobody's going to last if they really want to be brutal. And it can get really ugly. Sometimes the point of interrogation training is it teaches you that everybody has a breaking point, okay? But you learn from that. You learn that you're going to go farther than you expected you could. Everybody here can go farther than you think you can, okay? This is not about being tough. It's about being clever. It's about thinking. It's about anticipating. And if your cover story is good enough, and it's thought through enough, and it's researched and rehearsed and practiced, and it's part of you, they can put down a picture of your family, and you can blag your way through it, because you've already got yourself figured out. You got to make it work, though. Otherwise, this ain't going to be that much fun for anybody, okay?
Okay, everybody, could you come through?
With the interrogation debriefed, it's time for the teaching to begin. The recruits need to learn about tradecraft, the basic techniques of spying.
Yesterday, sort of my final words to you in the last debriefing were, go home, get some rest, take it easy, you've had a hard day. And then these guys burst in on you and took you away and did things. There I am telling you that I'm responsible for your training and I lied to you and so forth. The important thing is to remember that I'm going to keep lying to you, okay? If I'm being nice to you, that's the time when I want you to start to get worried, okay? That's the time when I'm trying to switch you off. The smart ones amongst you should immediately be thinking, Harry's up to something. He's got us on the back foot. If I've got you on the back foot, if I know that you're low and so forth, am I going to let up on you? No. No, I'm not, okay? So always be thinking, because I'm going to turn you over every time I can until you start catching me out. And then when you start spotting when I'm going to turn you over, that's when you're learning and that's when the training's actually working. Right, well, in order to find out what skills we need, we have to consider what a spy does day to day. Bread and butter of a spy's work. Run agents, okay? People like us, what we do best is we run people. We manipulate people. We get them to find out what we want to know. Big chunk of an agent's work. And if you're going to run agents, what are you going to do before that? Jenny?
I was going to say surveillance. Not, but that's...
Yeah, I'm thinking particularly of agents now.
Recruit agents.
Yeah, absolutely. Bang on the nose, okay? So if running agents is about 50% of a spy's work, recruiting agents is about another 50%. You're always on the lookout for people who are likely to be able to provide information to you. Anything else? Gabriel?
Surveillance, electronic or human.
Yeah. Planting bugs, or what we call covert operations, covert ops. CIA calls them black ops. This is when you go in, this is the James Bond stuff, going in with machine guns. It does have to happen, not very often. Now, defensive tasks, okay? We want to get you thinking both about the way you gather intelligence, but also what you've got to do to look after yourself, and most particularly the people who are working for you. So, Austin, some sort of defensive work the spy engages in?
Training. You have to train your agents.
Yeah, absolutely right.
Yeah.
Simon?
Well, you have to, your cover story, you have to mingle, you have to blend.
Look. Open your eyes and look. If you're working, it'll save your life. Okay. Tests like that are fairly straightforward, but they're exactly the same as intelligence services use on their training courses all over the world. Intelligence services have to make sure that their officers have powers of observation and that they notice the small details, because it's often those little details that may save the lives of their officers when they're out in the field.
Right, what we're going to talk about now is body language, your appearance, how you appear to others. It's very important, as we keep saying, that when you're on a mission that you blend into your environment. Your mission will actually dictate what you've got to look like. There are certain things that you have to take into consideration. Posture, gestures, the overall appearance that you're giving, facial expressions, the eyes, very important. Obviously mannerisms, and the thing that I always seem to notice is smell. If you're wearing an expensive perfume that's strong, you will be remembered by that smell. Okay, here we can see Max. As usual, he's got his hat on. I hate hats. You'll always be remembered for your hat, so I'd like to see you without a hat on from now on.
Austin, you haven't seen Max before. You take a look at him. Give me one thing you notice about him. Quick.
His height.
His height. Okay, you can't change that, right? When you're looking at somebody, when you're out and you're observing, look for things that these people aren't going to be able to change quickly. There's nothing that Max is going to be able to do about his height. He can, however, take his hat off, change into a suit, and you've got a completely different person.
I like the way you pretend to be naive. I don't think you're as naive as you really are. You giggle, you smile, and it's great. You get away with murder.
At this point, you don't exactly blend. And that's the goal. You don't want to stand out. You don't want to be the person that people notice. So that works against you.
You should tone down. Yeah. To me, she's a mismatch because you look like a bag lady, and then you talk with this posh accent. Tone down your accent so that it matches your appearance, or change your appearance to match your accent. Then people won't think there's something odd.
You've got one look here. It's sort of the boy band look. You've got a different look here. Yesterday, you're wearing the suit. So again, I mean, don't get lost in the weeds here. The whole point of this is how to create the appearance that you give off at any given time, what people think of that. It's very difficult to walk around in some sort of heightened state of alert where you're constantly observing what's going on around you. But part of the objective here is to get you to the point where you do raise that ability.
Okay, so when going grey, it's important you can be seen, but you mustn't be noticed. You've got to be a face that's not remembered, because that gives you the means of going into a situation, getting the information that you want, and then being able to come out of it. That's it. You've disappeared.
Most people go through life without a clue what's going on around them. People just don't notice. And our recruits can't do that. We've got to train them up. They've got to become aware. They've got to improve their ability to understand to the smallest detail what's going on around them. This morning is just a carryover from what we talked about yesterday afternoon. It's all about observation. A lot of times, a surveillance team, when they're out and moving around, there's a lot going on. So they don't necessarily have the time to gather everything. They're looking for the big picture. They want that first bit of information that may set them off on a new search. What you want to do initially is you want to look for something that bothers you. You want to look for things that look out of place. You want to look for inconsistencies. If something looks unusual, if something looks out of place, if something makes you feel a little uncomfortable maybe, or uneasy, then that's what you should start paying attention to.
I think we're just finding now that we're watching everybody, looking for everything, every little thing. Last night, we were listening to every car that went past the house, everybody that pulled up. There were some cones put up at the end of our road, and we were like, oh my God, they've coned our road off.
And then we stood there for about 15 odd minutes. What time did we do this? What time did we do that? Okay, the cones must have turned up at this time. And then we looked at the window later on and they were gone. Okay, so they must have gone about this time because they were there when this happened and that happened. What were we doing at the time? We were watching the news and then...
Now, this morning, what we're going to do, we're going to get on the pod. It takes about half an hour to move all the way around, so you've got plenty of time. There's going to be an awful lot of things going on, all right? There's going to be meetings, there's going to be exchanges, there's going to be things that really shouldn't be where they are. And the idea here is for you to try to understand and identify as many of these things as possible. You've got the time now because we're situated in a pod and we're moving very slowly. You've got the time to gather up as much information as you can. It takes a lot of practice. So don't expect during your first exercises that you're going to get everything. You've got to start looking for some indicators. Again, those indicators are things where, their actions don't make sense, where you've got encounters that don't make any sense. It's a very simple thing, but when it comes to clothes, again, think bland, think reversible jackets are great, layers. If I can walk in somewhere, take one top off, I've got two more tops underneath. Maybe I'm carrying a backpack, I can put on a different pair of shoes. Well, they saw the obvious things, but they missed the big picture. So I've sent them out to wander the streets, to become more comfortable in their environment. In reality, to learn how to walk around with a heightened state of awareness, to understand what's going on around them. The danger that we run here is in making them too sensitive, in introducing an element of paranoia. So it'll be interesting to see how they get on. I guarantee you, a week before they started this course, they wouldn't have had a clue what was going on around them. Now, not too far into the training, they're already becoming much more aware, becoming suspicious, becoming paranoid. Everybody's following them. Everybody's hostile. The important thing here is to teach them the importance of being aware, of watching and understanding what's going on around them, but to not let the paranoia, not let the suspicion overtake them. To use it to their benefit, but don't go overboard.
This mission pulls together all the skills the recruits have learnt so far. Their ability to enter a premises, their ability to design and maintain a cover, and their ability to blend into the background by going grey and hopefully not being discovered. Painstaking preparation is the key to operational success. It's not the glamorous part of the job, but if you don't get this part right, there's no chance of the operation succeeding.
And once you've agreed a plan, unless something dramatic changes on the ground that forces you to change that plan, you have to stick to it, no matter what. Obviously, on a real mission, if it's a life-and-death situation, you may be forced to change your plans at the last moment. But this is a training exercise, and it's good practice to clear any changes with the rest of your team so that they know what's going on and the mission isn't jeopardized.
Okay, well, thought as a break from your operational planning, we'd have a play with some toys or gadgets. It's what everybody expects a spy to use. First point to remember about technical devices is that you should avoid using them wherever possible. Your first line of defence should be this, your standard camera. The reason being that if you're caught with this on you, just a camera. If you move down the range to some of the smallest cameras, standard sort of piece of kit, if you get seen using this, chances are people are going to start asking questions. In some senses, if you can get away with it, the bigger the camera, the better. Because if you're using a large 35mm camera or something like that, you're not likely to be a spy, are you? Now, the reason you get them in these small sizes, the reason you get flat ones, is because the key is not just to placing the device. You could stick that under a table and it probably wouldn't be found except by a fairly determined search. But the real art is to take this and put it in an object to disguise it, so it's almost never found. This is another audio device, which, as you can see, looks like and works like an ordinary electrical socket. What's the problem?
Our flat is going to get so much for going over tonight.
cigarette packet. In a social situation where you're playing with this on the table, the meeting's at the next table, and you just lay your cigarette packet down, they're not going to be noticing across that distance the sort of device you've got. This is quite sufficient, yeah, for the job. One of the other devices that you might use in one of your operations, again, looks big and unwieldy, but is this pen cam, and that's simply switched on and off by the button on the top. And there we go. If it doesn't work, if you don't get the batteries in, if you don't get the shot you want, if it doesn't work at the moment when you've got in, for all your cleverness of getting into the premises that you're going to try and penetrate tomorrow, if you don't get the shot, you're to blame. Remember, the device doesn't do all the work. What's really important is the skill with which it's disguised, and more particularly, the skill with which it's placed. OK?
In the real world, what you've got to remember is that you're working as part of a team, and you never abandon a teammate, no matter how dangerous the situation is.
And this is the first time we've asked the students to cross a line between legality and illegality. What they're doing isn't exactly illegal, but it's certainly suspicious. And if they're going to be successful spies, they've got to learn how to handle this moral ambiguity.
At the heart of spying lies the ability to work undercover, to live and operate without others guessing the spy's real purpose.
Without the ability to work undercover, a recruit can never be a spy. Your work this week is mainly going to be centred on the next stage of tradecraft, which is cover and legend. Cover is the role you adopt for the operation. Legend is the supporting story, the props, and everything that goes to back you up as the person in that cover. Now, there are three basic types of cover. The first one is a snap cover. That's something which you adopt on the spur of the moment. An opportunity presents itself, and you suddenly need to pretend to be something other than what you are. The next type of cover is a short-term cover, generally just good enough for one mission. The next and most commonly used is long-term cover. Any intelligence service, regular officers who work in the field will have a small wardrobe, if you like, of regular covers which they can use. So this is where we get down to things like mother's maiden name, where you went to school, making sure that your dates are perfect. And because you use that cover year in, year out, you do get very good. The very purpose of a spy is to pass undetected amongst his enemies. On a real training course, more than 30% of the time will be spent learning to work undercover, more than any other subject. And any recruit who fails to master this skill will simply be dismissed. Even in their private life, most spies live under some form of cover. They can't even tell those closest to them what they really do for a living. That's how tough living undercover can be.
The props provide the basic outline of the cover. The recruits must now build up and flesh out the details of their stories, known as building backstops.
Cover is about being able to live another life so convincingly that you get alongside your enemy, befriend him, and get access to his deepest secrets. Then at the right moment, you betray the lot.
The new identities, known as legends, have been intentionally chosen to challenge the recruits emotionally and psychologically. Spies must remain detached and overcome any personal issue which could compromise a mission. In their safe houses, the recruits begin to piece together their legends, building the background and creating the stories which they will soon have to live.
It might have been only 6 hours since the recruits were given their personal legends, but spies can be sent out with almost no notice. It is at night that people are at their most vulnerable, and it's then that officials often come knocking with awkward questions.
In the unforgiving world of espionage, years of careful work and planning can be destroyed by one uncorroborated fact. It could mean imprisonment and even death.
The recruits have got a lot of work to do on their personal legends, but for deep cover, that is not enough. They are about to face an even harder task.
Let's talk briefly about the next mission. That involves not just your legend that you're going to start building. It also involves jobs.
Learning to work undercover means being able to pick up skills at a moment's notice. You have to be able to pass yourself off as a photographer, a fashion designer, even a nuclear physics graduate, whatever it takes. And you have to be able to move amongst those who can really do the job. Working undercover is a mixture of research, imagination, and bluff.
Spies must be able to blend into the world they need to penetrate. The recruits don't have to become professionals in these areas, but in a very short time they must learn the language and look the part.
We've assigned each pair of recruits an expert in their field to give them advice on what to wear, who to talk to, and how to bluff their way into the job.
For anyone hiding their true identity, lying is a vital skill. The recruits are given a lesson in deceit by military psychologist Professor John Potter.
Think about lying as a tactical tool. It's a bit like your legends and all the rest of it. Think about things in advance. Be original in the way you think things. If you can think quickly and make sure all the bits fit together, you're going to be a good, effective liar. If your language flows, if you can be eloquent, then you'll be convincing. You need to develop your memory skills so that you've got consistency in the story. Learn to manage the emotions. We all know we get that emotional feeling, and the classic thing is blinking. If you look at somebody who really is under pressure, having one of those emotional reactions, their blink rate tends to increase quite dramatically. Classic example of this was Saddam Hussein in the First Gulf War. Some of the interviews in the early part of that conflict showed him, and his blink rate was really excessive, which was one big clue as to the fact that he was lying. So look at blink rate. Eyes are fundamentally important when it comes to the whole business of communication. If you don't give eye contact at all, people think that you're being subversive. They think that you're up to something. If you're getting constant eye contact, you give them more or less constant eye contact. If they're speaking looking away, if you keep boring through them with your eyes, they will feel very uncomfortable. So pick up how they are using their eye contact and try and pace it and try and match it.
In preparation for their final mission, the recruits must sustain their personal cover at all times, as well as learn about their new profession. Spies are trained to cope with alcohol. The tutors have recruited a model to put the recruits' cover stories to the test.
How is everyone?
Fine, thanks.
Gravy.
Fine, great, okay. We're all over the map, aren't we? Jenny, the good news for you is you passed. You got some very good comments regarding your ability to adapt to the professional legend that you had. Nicola, you passed. According to the interviewer, you talked very confidently about your professional legend. You seemed comfortable. And that's half the battle. You've got to take this seriously, okay? There is nothing, in a sense, there's nothing more serious than your ability to operate undercover. But learn from it.
The recruits face one final mission. They've been invited to a cocktail party, but they have to maintain their cover. Living undercover is stressful. Spies can begin to lose a sense of their own identity. Some intelligence services have units to monitor their agents' psychological welfare.
This next test, the cocktail party, presents plenty of opportunity for the recruits to screw up. They've been instructed to maintain their cover, to work their legend. The problem is that for most of them, they're looking for an opportunity to blow off some steam. At this point, there's been a fair amount of stress. They've had a lot of tests thrown their way. So you throw some alcohol into the mix at a social setting, and we'll see who can keep it together. Somebody screws up, they're out.
In the dangerous world of spying, nothing is as it seems. The recruits don't know that the cocktail party has been rigged with secret cameras. They will be under constant observation.
Very nice Cabernet Sauvignon. I know, you can't beat Cabernet Sauvignon.
There is also another hidden danger which has been used to entrap spies since the days of the Cold War. 3 agents have been planted as honey traps. They've been rigged with miniature cameras and microphones. Their brief is to target the recruits, to entice them into blowing their cover and betray the others.
You two know each other, don't
A spy can never relax. The slightest indiscretion or slip of the tongue can cause their downfall. Suzy's blown her cover.
Okay, yeah.
And is about to commit a worse sin.
A young friend of mine, Rena, who's over there, the Indian lady. And he was
By pointing out her colleagues to the honey traps, she's betrayed her fellow recruits and compromised them all.
We're all here tonight. Oh, right. Oh, okay.
This is a fatal mistake for a spy.
Second position means putting yourself in the other person's viewpoint, becoming as like the other person as you can.
The course moves on to this week's lessons. Real spies must recruit a network of informers to gain access to sensitive information. The first step is to learn how to approach strangers and persuade them to do something for you. John Potter teaches the psychology of rapport.
You adapt so that you're speaking at the same sort of volume. What I would like is for one of you to talk for 2 minutes on something that you're really passionate about or really cross about or anything. And what I want is the listeners to copy the other person exactly.
I'm going to talk to you.
Human intelligence, or HUMINT, is a priority in the war against terror. Spies must be able to build relationships with potential informers. It's people who can often prove far more useful than any amount of advanced technology.
There's one thing that I can't stand, is people that have eggs.
Okay, stop. Now, hopefully, speakers, you will have found it fairly easy to talk because you're getting this non-verbal reinforcement. So now we're going to try the opposite. This time, I want the listeners to do everything they can to mismatch.
All the fast food is my kid, so I'm having to make myself eat.
And my toes are still cold and they stay cold for weeks. Because you're being so rude.
Okay, stop. How did you feel, speakers? Did you notice any difference between when you were talking in the first time when they were reinforcing you with the body language, whereas the second time where there was nothing? Nicola, how did you feel?
The first time that we were talking, I could have talked for quite a long time because they were very open and it seemed quite good. You could talk about whatever. But the second time, I even stopped talking at one point because I was like, I've got nothing to say. I couldn't even think of anything to say because they weren't listening to me.
That's the point. Now, often, unwittingly with our body language, we have that effect.
You've got to learn to be the world's best listeners.
After the lesson on body language, the recruits learn how a spy profiles his target.
Sometimes you really are walking into a cafe, there's that target for the first time, and you got to make a decision. What am I going to do? Well, you look at the way they're dressed, you look at the way they're sitting. Are they reading anything? What the hell are they reading? You know, are they reading the Post? Are they reading the Financial Times? Do they have a briefcase? Do they have a bag? If so, what kind is it? Is it expensive? Is it a knockoff? Are they wearing a lot of makeup? Are they not? Look for whatever clues you can pick up on as you're approaching that target that's going to help you come up with something. This morning, you're going out there, where there are a variety of strangers that you're going to be approaching and asking for various favors. gonna have to get them to do something, to give you something, to assist you in some way. And you're gonna have to draw information out of people without them understanding what it is that you're up to. So make sure you use your head. And good luck. All right, so what did we learn from that? The same thing we've been telling the recruits all along. Confidence. It's believing in what you're about to do. You can't just wing something. It doesn't work that way. You get ready for an operation, you've got to go and you got to know that you've done your homework. And we've got to see more of that over the next few weeks.
You know that you're after particular information, but just try and see it as a normal conversation. People do this all the time, and that's the way to control your nerves and react naturally, because they will react badly to you if they suspect that you're uncomfortable. Making an approach, breaking the ice with a stranger, is one of the key skills of a spy. And every intelligence service will hold some sort of exercise like this.
This exercise is going to be a very interesting test for them. They've got to learn to separate their feelings from the job at hand.
They're going to be reminded that they can't trust anybody, not even each other.
What they're going to have to do is build a barrier between their old selves and the new job that they're doing, and that's being a spy.
This mission is secret. It must remain secret from each of you. In no way must it lead to physical violence, the police being called, any element of coercion. It is absolutely an exercise in persuasion and the control of the relationship between you and the other parties who are part of that mission. Once again, we've raised the hurdle a little higher. This is going to be a little bit more difficult, and I suspect it is going to find one or two of you out. It is important that you complete it well. It's an important part of your assessment and whether you go forward in this course. Good luck.
Recruits are all taken off in different directions. Only when they arrive at their destination will they learn what their mission is to be. But one vital detail will be withheld from them: the identity of their targets. The people they'll be expected to manipulate will turn out to be the family or friends of their fellow spies. Unwittingly, they will betray one another. They will learn that in the world of espionage, even the privacy of one's own family can be violated. No one can be trusted.
You've spent the last 2 days doing quite a difficult mission. I expect you're all keen to know how you performed. You might find this interesting.
Just this front bedroom, it won't be published or anything, it's just for my own personal records. Right. I'll be 2 minutes. Okay. Is that okay? Brilliant.
The lady at Balfour said, oh, it's no problem, find a similar property and I'm sure they'll be all right, so you have a quick look round. So you can have a look. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name's Gabriel. I'm from the Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment. Right. If I can take a few pictures of the house, is that all right?
Yeah. So how does it feel to know that your fellow spies were able to target your families or your friends and get into their houses?
And I've been knocking on 5, 6 other doors and it's getting too
Bit too close to home, actually.
I've worked with guys who I've known for 20 years. I know absolutely nothing about their families, where they've come from, anything. And I don't want to know, because if I know that information, I may be tempted to use it to my advantage at some time. This is a warning for all of you. If anyone else ever puts a fellow spy into a compromising position, leaves them unprotected, does anything which, in my opinion, is potentially dangerous for them, I don't care whether you pass and you succeed in your mission, because you will have failed right at that point. Remember that at all times.
And when they did realise that their homes had been visited, many of them didn't react well. The emotional strains are clearly beginning to show. In some cases, I'm not sure that recruits are going to make it much further.
Despite all the recent advances in surveillance technology, a camera is no substitute for the human eye. So every spy must master the art of surveillance, how to observe without being seen.
The main purpose of surveillance is to gather intelligence on a target, whether that's a spy, a suspected terrorist, or a possible informer. And as a spy, you're more than likely to be the target of surveillance yourself.
This week, you're going to be learning the sort of surveillance that intelligence officers do, OK? Which is covert. We put people under surveillance, we try and spot surveillance, all without revealing what we're really doing. When you're working abroad in another country, you're there as a businessman, you're there as a delegate at a scientific conference, you're there as a tourist, yeah? You have to live those covers that we've taught you, using all those rules of going grey, and this skill goes underneath. You use it without it being obvious what you're doing, and that's very difficult, OK? That's the real art. If we can see any of you master that, then we'll know we've got somebody who's on the right track. Once you learn how to spot surveillance, first thing you'll do is become paranoid. You'll start seeing it everywhere. You'll think we've got you under surveillance all the time, and you might be right, but you probably won't be, okay? So what we then have to do is, having tuned you up, is tune you down so that you spot it when it's really there and you don't just jump at shadows. That we manage to get this emotional detachment from you, that you start being able to act like a normal person, look like a normal person, but all the time your brain's working on this extra level, using these skills that we give you.
Up until this point, we've been encouraging the recruits to be more aware, to be suspicious, and trying to develop a healthy sense of paranoia. And that when you're out there preparing for an operational event, there's a tendency to think that everything is suspicious. And that's where they are right now. But we've got to be able to develop their ability quickly to discern what is and what isn't important to them. We're going to put them out on Brick Lane in East London. We're going to run them through a surveillance exercise that's used by a lot of services, called different things. Sometimes it's called a phantom follower. They have to identify whether they've got surveillance or not. Some of them will, some of them won't. I guarantee you that they'll all identify more surveillance than is actually out there. What do you look for when you're out on the street and you're concerned that you might be followed? What doesn't seem right? Is there something that makes you uncomfortable? Are you seeing the same person, the same persons in more than one location? Are they stopping repeatedly, turning around and looking behind them? Are they doing things that just seem awkward and unnatural? Because every time they stop, it causes the surveillance, if there's surveillance behind them, to react. And that gives you your opportunity to identify what you've got behind you.
You know, things have happened, like the going for the interrogation, things like that, where we've got to the point where we're suspecting absolutely everything.
Paranoia spreads through us like wildfire.
It does. It's like a disease.
And it only takes one person to mention it, and we all panic. And I hadn't even thought about it last night. Somebody mentioned it, and I'm like...
It's too hard trying to second-guess all the time what's coming around the corner, because we just end up spending hours talking about it and analysing everything you've said or other people have said to us, and it's pointless.
You cannot afford to become so uptight and tense, because that will affect your job. And what you've got to make sure you do is that you stay relaxed and calm.
If you've got this feeling that we're testing you all the time and so forth, run what checks you can and so forth, but if you're still, haven't got anything, well, just let it go. Otherwise, you just won't be able to function. You'll go mad in the end.
Those are the people who have nervous breakdowns, the people who can't let go like that. Try and remain emotionally detached, OK? Just see it as a job, follow the rules. Surveillance is an art, not a science, and it takes many years of hard work to perfect. The first skill which every spy has to learn is how to go foxtrot, which means to follow a target on foot. So first, the ABC system, which is very basic, but it's the first step which everybody learns. The first thing is trigger position, okay? A trigger position is somebody letting the surveillance team know that the target's on the move and the operation has begun. Once the target is on the move, whoever's following the target, in this system referred to as A, is known as the eyeball. He's the guy who stays just behind the target and is responsible for commentating on everything the target does. He has control of the operation at any particular time. The second position in the ABC system is the backup. The backup's job is to be in such a position that if the eyeball for some reason has to break away, backup can immediately take over. And then finally, there's position C, the reserve. If A's forced to pull out, B's job is to take over, C must immediately become the backup. And then A, who's balked at the traffic lights, A would then become C. And you need to rotate the eyeball position a lot. Because if you've got a target who's at all conscious, they're always going to be looking. And what they're looking for is, I saw that guy then, and now I've seen him again, and now I've seen him again. If he's at all suspicious of you, then you describe yourself as warm. If you've got too close to him, you've had eye contact, you're afraid that you've been too close to him for too long, then the general term for you is toasty. And finally, you'll get people who feel they've done something so obvious that the target must have twigged them as suspicious, even if he hasn't realised they're part of a surveillance team, but they've done something which means their face will be remembered, OK? Then you're described as burned.
Every spy will need to be able to contact their agent whilst under surveillance and know when a contact is taking place.
In this age of advanced communications, it may seem that traditional methods of passing messages are redundant. But there will be times when the technology is not available, or you may be working against an enemy which is using basic techniques in order to evade electronic detection. So every spy must be trained both to use these methods and to spot them. Brush contacts are the most basic means of agent communication, used when the agent is working in a high-security environment. A brush contact is a momentary meeting between an intelligence officer and his agent, at which information is passed, and it lasts no more than a few seconds. The intelligence officer will take one route in, the agent will take another route in, and this is where the brush contact occurs. Ideally, the point when you're actually together should not be observed. It should be hidden in some way. There should be something that just buys you a couple of seconds, because that's the most dangerous moment. If you're seen passing something, that's it. The agent is going to be in a country where, by definition, there are a lot of security measures in place. He's meeting somebody he's not met before. So sometime early, there should be a point at which the intelligence officer and the agent are able to see each other, OK? And they need to carry nice, big, clear recognition signals. For instance, the officer will be carrying a red carrier bag of a particular make and a yellow rucksack, something as obvious as that, OK? There are so many bits you've got to get right. The recognition signals have to be seen, you have to be there at the right time, the routes have to be cleared, OK? Everything's got to be just perfect, or else it's a waste of time sending you into the country to hold the meeting.
Because we work in unpredictable and hostile environments, verbal recognition phrases are often used to confirm that a contact can go ahead.
This week's exercises have raised a number of concerns.
They're still not drawing a line between the people they were and the professionals we want them to be.
And it's not as if we haven't said it to them time and time again that they've got to detach themselves from their families and their former lives.
It's a bit disappointing. We're this far down the road and we're still having these issues, particularly from some of them, and I think Jenny being one of them, Simon and Max again, I think being others.
It worries me because you're talking about some of the stronger candidates on the course.
Right.
So we've got to conquer this problem. We're going to lose some of our best people.
We need to play on their emotions, perhaps.
Maybe combining surveillance and that sort of emotional detachment in one exercise is the way to finally say to them, this is what it's like.
Yeah.
You've got to grow up and become spies.
The recruits receive the briefing for this week's final mission. It has been designed to test their emotional strengths and weaknesses. They need to demonstrate absolute professionalism if they're to progress with their training. If they don't, they may be asked to leave the course.
Okay.
Like real spies, the recruits must learn to operate in a state of uncertainty. The trainers keep them on edge by limiting the amount of information they're given on the mission, including the identity of their targets. The recruits believe they will be working in 2 teams and travel to Brighton on separate trains, but this will be an individual test for each of them.
Today you're going to be briefed on your next mission. It is very, very difficult. There will only be 2 teams of 3.
They will be breaking into private property and carrying out long-term static surveillance. Every spy of every service must be trained in this skill. Your mission this week is to maintain static surveillance on a target address. This is going to be difficult. We've done this job. We know what it's like at 3:30 in the morning, when you're tired, when it's the 5th day, when you're fed up with each other, when you stink to high heaven, when you're tired of the food and the place is covered in rubbish and the equipment's starting to pack up on you because the batteries are running out. That's when it will start to get tough.
The mission is to build up a detailed profile of the residents in the target houses and to obtain a specific piece of information from them.
These missions are real training scenarios. Unlike in previous weeks, this mission is more complex and will last for several days. The recruits must stay alert at all times or risk missing out on a vital piece of information. What if you get an operational briefing that says you've got to set up surveillance on this house? You've got to know entrances and exits into this building. You've got to understand the environment that it's in. You've got to know who are the people that hang out in this neighborhood. There's nothing more dangerous than some nosy person who suddenly, gets a bug up their ass, decides to call the police because something funny's going on in the street. Now, what happens if there's no flat or there's no office? There's nothing like that. What's another option?
What about a vehicle?
What kind of vehicle?
Something that doesn't stand out too much but gives you enough room to be able to keep an eye on things.
All right, I'll go with that. Let's take a van, a workman's van. So you're sitting in the back of the van. Guy next to you is in an empty water bottle. He slips and drops the bottle. It goes all over the place. Van keeps stinking. Believe me, you can't imagine how bad it gets back there. But you got to maintain sight of the target. You got to maintain the operation all the time. There's a certain mentality. That's why you see a lot of people that tend to do surveillance as their primary activity. It takes a certain mindset, a lot of patience, a certain ability to focus on one objective. So you got to give them a lot of credit. It's a very tough job. The first priority of static surveillance is to set up an observation post, or OP. Each team has to settle in and watch the property to establish patterns in their target's movements. Breaking into a house is an invasion of privacy, but it has to be done in order to install the surveillance equipment. Moral objections to doing something like this shouldn't even cross a recruit's mind. It's simply part of the job. The recruits will be spying on members of the public in their own homes. They must be very discreet. Both the mission and their personal safety are at risk if they're spotted. The recruits are coming to the end of this mission. They're tired, they're agitated, they're desperate for information. As a result, they're more likely to make a mistake. This is the most dangerous time for a spy.
Our recruits have learnt the basics of tradecraft, but it's now time to raise the level of difficulty for them.
This is where it gets real. The recruits will now be living full-time, undercover, out in the world.
Recruiting and running agents, getting them to work at the sharp end, is the most important job that a spy does.
Right now, we're going to move on to pretty much the heart of the matter. We have to develop agents. These are the people that put their lives on the line on your behalf. You've got to gather up as much information as you can about who they are, what they're like, what are their family situations like, what's their background. And profiling is essentially the first step in this whole process.
Okay, what we're now going to do is garbology. Ideally, you would collect the rubbish from your target household for 5 weeks to get all the information that you need.
Garbology is practiced by all intelligence services, including MI6. But for everyday citizens, the practice is illegal. This can only be a classroom exercise for the recruits. From the scraps of rubbish, the spy builds up a picture of the target he wants to turn into an agent.
What you're looking for is anything that tells you information about the people who are living there. So you're looking for things like that, Zara's Tropical Foods, so that's where they're going shopping. You're looking for photographs, you're looking for letters, cards, bank statements. Piece those together with sellotape, because on that you may get names and addresses. The London Central Mosque Trust, so maybe that's where they go. So you're getting an idea of their religion. You know, what are their pastimes? Here, we've got bingo tickets. If you wanted to meet this person, you go to the bingo hall.
They go to the early bingo, which means that they might not necessarily have a job.
That's good. Well done.
Somehow, you've got to take a normal, everyday person who probably hasn't thought of betraying their country, betraying secrets, and you've got to turn them into a person who will work for you. The first stage of the recruitment process we call the approach. Okay? Now, you're already familiar with this, believe it or not. You remember the cafe exercise where you had to select a target, go in, find out information about them, and get them to agree to another meeting. That's the approach. It's the first time you make contact with the target. And then you come to the second really important moment in any cultivation operation. I'm calling it the trust stage. At some stage, as you get to know this person, you have to ask them to do something which is not illegal, but slightly iffy. Some kind of stage that makes them feel that that you're someone they can trust, and they can do something that's slightly dodgy for you, okay? They've actually got to start to cross a line. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this week's mission, and it's a hard one. This week's mission is to work undercover against a target we have selected, and to take that target through the first stages of recruitment, from the initial approach through to the trust stage. And to prove that you have accomplished that stage, you will get the target to undertake a mission which we will outline for you. You will work in teams of 2. One of you will live undercover as the field officer, working alongside the target. The other one will be the support officer, responsible for debriefing and supporting the officer in the field. The target doesn't know who you are, nor do those working around them. You must maintain your cover at all times. Is that clearly understood?
Yeah.
Working for real intelligence organisations, such as MI6 or the CIA, you must learn to rely on and to trust your fellow spies. But there are times when this may conflict with loyalty to the organisation, and that always has to come first.
We have identified 2 recruits who show weaknesses and character traits that we think, if they were working as genuine spies, would put themselves and their colleagues at risk. And we're going to get the other 4 to get the evidence to prove it.
The question is, where will the recruits' loyalty lie? Will their loyalty towards their friends hold them back from performing their best at this mission? And will they realize that in the real world, a spy's hesitation to be ruthless could put them all at risk? This is a crucial test of loyalty, a test that most recruits will face at some point during their training.
Recruits Gabriel and Nicola are called to spy school for a private briefing with tutor Sandy Williams.
Come in and take a seat.
They've been told to keep this meeting a secret from the other recruits.
Okay. This week, I want you to do an additional task for me. There's your target. The problem is there are too many inconsistencies with him, and we don't really know what he's up to. This is a serious mission. And at the end of it, someone will be going. If you bring me the evidence, that's it. If you fail in this mission, I will actually have to think quite seriously about whether you've got what it takes to be a spy.
Okay, thank you.
Gabriel and Nicola must try to record evidence that Max is weaving a web of lies. Jenny and Austin are next to be briefed on their secret mission by tutor Harry Ferguson.
I'm asking you to work against Simon. When he went down to Brighton, he got a picture of his wife passed to him, okay? And he's still got it in his possession. I want the evidence. You have two options, confession and entrapment. In aid of that, there's this digital recorder, which you might be able to use.
Being a spy brings you face to face with big moral dilemmas. The challenge is to see beyond personal emotions and feelings. This is a job. It's bigger than the individual. The two recruits must suspect nothing. With spy school working as normal, it's unlikely that they'll guess they're under internal investigation. So for them, it's classroom activity and practice missions as usual.
Gabriel, tell me what a dead letterbox is.
A dead letterbox is a place where you can exchange information with another person that is seemingly... no, like a hole in the wall or a tin can in a pile of rubbish, somewhere that is seemingly innocuous but also is unlikely to be disturbed.
A dead letterbox these days has tended to be replaced by electronic systems. Now that we're in the terrorist war, we're going back to these old systems because they work, because any intelligence service, any terrorist intelligence unit in the world can use these manual systems. And that's why officers have to be trained in them, have to know what to look for, have to know what somebody they're following might be up to, have to recognise the signs of what's happening. Nicola, what's a fill signal?
That's a mark that you make on your route so that the person knows if you've put the information into your dead letterbox.
When you've got a dead letterbox, you've got to let your agent know there's something there to be collected, and that means you've got to have a fill signal. This mission will involve each team following an enemy agent. Now, for the purposes of this exercise, the enemy agent will be played by a role player. But that role player is a person who has training in intelligence skills. In the real intelligence services, we use role players all the time. So this stage of your training is exactly the same as if you were training for any one of the major intelligence services. You have to be put up against people who know what they're doing. Throughout this mission, you are going to have to examine every piece of evidence, every activity, carefully. If you treat this as a straightforward walk in the park, you're going to come back with nothing. It will take you to an area that you've never worked in before, completely fresh.
For their official missions, the teams have been instructed to intercept a dead letter drop between enemy agents somewhere outside of London. They have been issued with vehicles for this mission. Real spies must be able to function in new and unknown environments. The recruits are being sent away from the now familiar surroundings of spy school and London. The official mission has been devised so that the recruits will spend 48 hours in close proximity But 2 members of each team have a long, uncomfortable journey ahead of them. They know that their real mission is to target their teammate and betray him.
The team have to intercept a dead letter drop between 2 enemy agents. But at the same time, Jenny and Austin have to undertake a secret mission against Simon. And it's going to be interesting to see how they manage to do that. Well, they're going into the garden shed. It's not a bad observation post. And I think it could work quite well for the mission against Simon. But they're going to have to make sure that they spread out and cover the ground adequately. It's not enough just to stay in that shed on its own. It doesn't give a good enough view.
OK, Nikki spotted the target, she's got a good vantage point, and she's keeping the rest of the team informed on what's going on.
Oh, he's made a mark. He's made a mark. I'm sure he has. He shouldn't shout.
So Nikki has got the canister out. No one seems to have seen her. She's now reading it. Nikki's put the canister back. It's really important that she does that because she doesn't want to blow the operation so that the agent will know what's happened. There are times when it is important to let the agent carry on thinking that they're totally unobserved, because then you can feed information to your opposition. You're then in control.
The time to complete the missions, both official and secret, is over.
OK, so your primary mission was a failure?
Yes, that's correct.
Because you didn't manage to get the information that was in the DLB. Austin, tell me what your secondary mission was.
Our secondary mission was for me and Jenny to get a confession from Simon that he had broken the rules, or to get him to break the rules in mine and Jenny's presence. We hoped to get him to confess to having a picture of his wife. I managed to record conversation that was between me, Jenny and Simon.
Yeah.
And from Simon's answers, it was clear that he still has the picture of his wife in his possession.
Simon, do you have those pictures from Bride?
I have one photograph of my wife, yes. And I wasn't going to rip up a photograph of my wife.
How many times have I told you that you cannot afford to bring your family into your spy life? You have photographs of your family. They fall into the wrong hands, they will become a target. Their lives will be on your conscience for the rest of your life.
It's one of the most fundamental points about being a spy. You protect your family. If you can't protect your family, you can't protect your country. Every operation a spy undertakes has a security officer, and their job is to monitor the staff who work in that organisation and to probe for weaknesses or leaks. And they get other officers in that organisation to help out, because the best people to investigate are the friends of officers, the colleagues of officers. So the sort of thing we've been asking some of you to do is exactly what intelligence officers have to do in the real world. So you've been doubly tested, and I know it's been hard, I know it's been a strain on some of you. Spy school is over. The recruits are about to be sent abroad on their final mission. But first we need to know that we can trust them. Before any recruit becomes a spy, they must pass the ultimate test: loyalty.
When you're out on a mission, things can go wrong. Your cover can be blown, you could fall into enemy hands, or be left on your own. You could feel let down by your organisation.
That's when a spy is most likely to be open to approaches from the other side. This is how agents become double agents. To prove their loyalty, our recruits will have to deal with false sex scandals, vast sums of money...
Yeah, there's probably about 100 grand or something like that.
...and media manipulators.
2 weeks ago, we sent the recruits to meet PR expert Max Clifford. They were told that this was an advance meeting for spy publicity. But they should know by now that nothing is as it seems. Max Clifford is working for us and will prove instrumental in this week's test.
There's a dangerous trap waiting for them. These spies are about to be left out in the cold.
There is a message that I wish to play for you.
You have completed the training course. You should now have all the necessary skills to complete your final mission.
From now on, you're on your own. Totally on your own.
You must now ensure that you leave no trace of yourselves. You have just 2 hours to remove yourselves and all belongings from your houses. You must leave your houses exactly as you found them. There must be no trace that you were ever there.
You must be prepared not to see each other again.
You should head directly to your houses and make sure that you are not followed. Good luck.
The recruits now find themselves without a permanent base, without the support of spy school and their tutors. This is the first step in making them feel alone and alienated. When a spy no longer feels he has the support of his organisation, he is more likely to be susceptible to approaches from the other side. When vacating a safe house, you have to make sure you leave nothing behind which will allow you to be identified. You have to be meticulous. A stray hair or a piece of paper could be your undoing.
From this point on, they will be kept on the move to increase their sense of disorientation and confusion. As soon as the properties are empty, tutors Sandy Williams and Harry Ferguson check them for incriminating evidence.
This is operational mission orders, and they've left them in a rubbish bag in their flat for people like me to come and find out exactly what they've been up to. So they're blown, they're done.
Bingo. There's nothing on this, but there is. Cover story, adopt, legend, and supporting props. Which just nobody writes that sort of thing down unless they're involved in some sort of intelligence work. So that's another one there, the bang to rights.
They've tried to burn it, so it must be worth something. I don't want to disintegrate it now.
The burnt area they can treat with different kinds of light, and often, although the paper is burnt, the ink leaves a trace which the different kinds of light will reveal the writing. I mean, it depends, but I've seen them pull stuff off burnt stuff before. And you've got fragments like this, look, M1974 anti-tank systems. I mean, again, so military connection hardware.
I just can't see what that is.
This was after only 20 minutes search, so you can imagine if they're on their way to the airport or something, they're not going to make it. They'll be picked up before they even board the plane or get over the border or whatever, if we've moved in quickly. And this is all over the garden, so this is in 20 minutes. If we had an hour to absolutely go through it with a fine-tooth comb, I should think we'd have the lot.
Bingo! Bingo. Simon Dilworth and Nicola Jackson. So, whether it's fake or not, this was actually their legend, and they've left a copy of their marriage certificate for their legend, from their legend here. Bloody crazy.
12 hours later, the recruits are about to face what they've been told is the first part of their final mission. In this mission, they must follow a target known as the White Rabbit. The target is a role player who has been hired to recreate real-life espionage scenarios. This is how the real intelligence services arrange tests for their recruits. They must plant a tracking device on the White Rabbit by slipping it into their bag or onto their person. Above all, they must not lose the target. Both teams have failed. They don't realize that this is the first stage in making them feel isolated and inadequate. All intelligence recruits must have their loyalty tested at the end of their training. The tutors have been sowing the seeds of betrayal.
In reality, there was no way they were going to pass these missions. They were set up to fail. The real test was not whether they could use their tradecraft skills. They'd already proven they could do that. What we were looking to do was to understand how they cope with failure. What they do when they think they've run out of friends.
It's the next morning. To reinforce the recruits' sense of failure and make them feel even more dejected, the tutors have arranged another Mission Impossible. Once again, there's no way that the recruits can succeed.
Right, okay. Spies have to have a photographic memory because they can't risk committing confidential information to paper.
The recruits are about to receive more bad news.
All 4 recruits are going to be told that they're being kicked off the course. We're going to make them hate us, and then we're going to put their loyalty to the ultimate test.
One at a time, the recruits are called in to see tutors Harry Ferguson and Sandy Williams. The recruits each think that they alone have been expelled from the course. They can't get in touch with each other and assume that everyone else has already flown abroad for the last part of the final mission. They all pack, phone their confidants and make their preparations, thinking they are going home.
It may seem that we're being unnecessarily cruel to the recruits, but this is exactly the sort of disillusionment which all spies must go through. We're about to test their loyalty, and the only way to do that is to make them resent us, make them believe they're on their own, and make them believe that the course is finally over.
This is where the test really starts. Over the last 2 weeks, we have made sure that the recruits have seen a confidential email. We have intentionally left it in places that they'll find it, in the back of a car at spy school. This supposed email is from the programme producers to myself about an alleged affair that resulted in my being dismissed from MI5. This is what the recruits believe to be true. But in fact, there was no affair, and the organisation I worked for was not MI5.
This has all been one elaborate setup. Max Clifford is known as a man who can cut deals and make vast sums for his clients. But in fact, he's working with us, and he's going to try and persuade the recruits to reveal confidential information they have about the tutor, Sandy Williams. This is the sort of moral dilemma which all spies must face. Our recruits are angry and confused, thinking they've been thrown off the course. But will they take the bait and place their own welfare above that of the course?
The recruits' last duty before going home is to have a telephone conversation with public relations expert Max Clifford, who will be talking to them from his villa in Spain. Max Clifford is going to try to make the recruits betray the course by selling their story about tutor Sandy Williams. For this, he will offer them the fee of £100,000. Recruit Max has freely given away the compromising information about his tutor. Like any spy who is disloyal to his organisation, he will face the consequences.
The recruits have been on the go 7 days a week without a break since the course started, and they think they're finally going home. They are psychologically drained and won't know how to react when they see their fellow recruits are still in this country and realise that they are still being tested.
We've just had to put you through a very difficult and a very secret stage of the training. All real spies have to be tested so that it's known that if they're away, they think they've been forgotten about, they're on their own, there's no backup, everything's against them, that at that moment when everything seems its darkest, they still don't crack. And that's the test you've all had to be put through. Okay? So I'm afraid the course is still on, despite what you may have thought. And Sandy's going to tell you how well you did during the latest phase of your training. Sandy?
Okay. I think I need to tell you a few facts. I was not a member of MI5. I was not kicked out of any service. I have not had an affair with a senior officer. It was just a setup. Okay? I'm sorry to disappoint you. Nikki, as expected, you were fantastic. You did not say anything. And I'm very pleased that you behaved as I hoped you would. Max. This is what Max said at precisely 12:43 this afternoon in Max Clifford's office. You said she went out with somebody and she had to leave MI5 because of it. And if I had more, I'd give it to you because I really hated her. We've got it on tape.
It's true.
Yeah. The thing I'd like to say on that is 2 points. Firstly, you let your personal views of me colour your actions. And as a spy, you have to remain detached. You have to put the job apart from your personal views. And secondly, the fact that you were willing to give information out, confidential information out, on a fellow spy, which ultimately, in the real world, could have meant, I mean, if this was an agent trying to turn you into a double agent, you sold me down the line. The consequences for me could have been fatal.
And the final 3 recruits are going to have to put everything they've learned over the past 2 months to the test. Surveillance, manipulating strangers, obtaining secret information, and maintaining a cover story. But this time it's on foreign soil. They know that from this point on, it's every spy for themselves. In the end, there can be only one perfect spy.
Spy school is over. The 3 remaining recruits are about to embark on their final mission. After 2 months of relentless training and intensive practicing, they're emotionally and physically drained. Now they're about to embark on a full-scale operation on foreign soil for the first time.
Like real intelligence agencies worldwide, we will be testing the recruits in a constructed role-play scenario. This will involve illegal dealings, a breach of national security, set in a hostile, dangerous environment.
Because of its sensitive nature, this has got to be a controlled exercise. But for our remaining recruits, this is as real as it gets. The time has finally come to see who has the makings of a true spy.
For this final mission, the target is an actress playing the part of a rogue British scientist. The recruits will be told that she's trying to sell smart weapon technology to foreign terrorists. The recruits must follow the target wherever she may go and obtain a copy of the information she's trying to sell. The recruits have not been told that they're working on the same mission. Separation and disorientation are common psychological techniques used on field exercises to increase the feelings of isolation and vulnerability. Support agents assist Jenny in creating the right look for her assigned legend, a wealthy international traveler.
Like in real-life operations, we're going to be splitting up the recruits to take on different parts of the mission. Jenny's going to be flying out on her own. We're sending her ahead to pick up a suspect. Now, up till now, Jenny's been very capable, but in reality, we've never pushed her out of her comfort zone. It'll be interesting to see how she copes.
Nicola and Gabriel should be here at any moment in their new disguises. We decided to put them together as a team. But Nicola doesn't trust Gabriel. He likes to take control of everything, and Nicola resents that. On the other hand, after last week's exercise, Gabriel is the more psychologically broken of the two, and he may well have to rely on Nicola more than he would normally like. It's going to be interesting to see how the two of them work together. Real training exercises involve role-playing, and we've constructed a complex story involving arms deals, betrayal, and smuggling. It's already begun. This morning, Jenny flew to Gibraltar, and shortly, Nicola and Gabriel will pick up the target in a hotel just down the road. We've designed the story to have many twists and turns, to disorientate the team, and also to push them to their very limits. This represents exactly the sort of scenario a spy might face in the real world, and every intelligence agency uses training exercises just like this. Foreign missions are different. On the one hand, they seem more glamorous. You have foreign travel, and you get more support from your parent organisation in terms of cover, information, gadgets. But on the other hand, they're more psychologically demanding. When you work abroad, you're truly aware that you're on your own.
Tutor Mike Baker arrives to set up the foreign HQ for the mission. He'll be responsible for monitoring the recruits' progress and throwing in a few surprises to keep them on their toes. The recruits knew they had to keep sight of the target and follow wherever she led them, but they had no idea it could mean a last-minute change of country.
Go quickly.
Without the tutors or the support structure of spy school, they'll have to act quickly, buy their own tickets, and travel to another continent.
We've been in 3 countries in one day. This is what it's all about. It is more scary, especially because we don't know the places where we're going, where we're having to follow people. And also, these guys speak different languages. It's not just people talking in English that you've got to listen. You've got to listen to people speaking French or Spanish, Arabic, whatever else, as well as trying to get your head around being in a completely different location. And it is a bit nerve-wracking as well, because if something did go wrong, it would be so much harder to explain this to the authorities than it would be in England.
For thousands of years, Tangier has been the strategic gateway between Africa and Europe. Its notorious history is filled with the illicit, the immoral, and the dangerous. This is where the recruits will have to prove what they are made of.
All right, well, the 3 of them made it here. We're going to split them up right away, put them in separate hotels. Basically, the idea is to keep them off balance. In addition, we're going to be withholding information from them, so they're not going to know what's coming up next. All this on top of the fact that after last week's mission, they're tired, they're agitated, they're burnt out.
The recruits must carry out a box surveillance operation, using skills that they learnt weeks ago on the streets of London. But blending in and going unnoticed on foreign soil is another matter, and will test the limits of their surveillance skills. Their performance will be assessed on how successfully they manage to follow and photograph the target.
We're asking a lot of them, and they are finding it difficult. But at the same time, they got to pull it together. I mean, I think that part of this is, at the end of the day, the winner is whoever can focus the best, whoever's also the most competitive, and you know, at the end of the day, just remembers everything that they've been doing so far. All right, here's what you're gonna do. On this is a small transmitter. What you gotta do is get this thing in there. You gotta switch this on. You gotta slap it under the table. How you do that is gonna be down to you, and you're gonna have to pick up whatever you can. The point where she leaves, what are you gonna have to do? Exactly. Yeah, well done. All right. I'll contact you in the morning, and we'll figure out what we're gonna be doing from that point on. But you gotta collect what you can for tonight, all right? All right, you'll do this.
Covertly planting and retrieving listening devices are key spy skills, but they always carry the risk of the spy being burnt or noticed by the target. If they become at all suspicious, the entire operation will be compromised. Tutor Mike Baker monitors the recruits' progress from the bar kitchen via covert surveillance cameras. This is the critical part of the mission. The recruits can't afford to miss a single word of the conversation. They must establish the specifics of the deal and, crucially, the whereabouts of the confidential information.
Should you know? Yep. No, we're going to go. Right, good luck, darling. You know what you're doing.
Excuse me, do you speak English? Yes. Oh, wonderful. Do you have a light at all?
Sorry, I don't.
All right, well, her encounter was brief. She was very smooth, and that's why she's made it this far. They obviously had a quick decision. Obviously, Jenny's got to be listening in. She's the only one who speaks French between the 2 of them. And the danger here is, of course, the target's going to have a conversation in nothing but French with a primary target. So at least they were on top of that. They realized who had to go in and plant the bug and who didn't. Now you can see why these 2 ended up at the end here.
The recruits know that they must intercept the information on the target's laptop before it's passed on to the terrorists. The handover is happening today, and they are almost out of time.
This is the key to the entire mission. It doesn't look like much. It's a data storage fob. I'm going to give 1 to each of the recruits. Their mission: gain access to the target's computer, download her illegal files, and then get the hell out of the country. The point of this exercise is not to get caught with kit like this.
Jenny and Nicola think that they've completed the final mission successfully, but there is one test still to come, and it's the hardest one that they've had to face. Tutor Mike Baker has arranged to meet the recruits in the fishing port, but he has no intention of keeping the appointment.
So now they're on foot, walking through port area in Tangiers, and it's not the safest area.
In this final test, the tutors have arranged for local agents to pose as police officers and to arrest the two recruits. To make the scenario even more realistic, the cameraman who is accompanying them will also be arrested. For the first time on this course, the recruits will think they are totally on their own. There are no tutors, no mobile phones, and no producers to rely on.
Good evening. Will you stop that, please? This is an area that is forbidden to film in here, you understand? Yeah. Okay, so I need a filming permit.
A situation like this first minute or two is probably the most important time. You're either going to put them at ease and they're going to wander off and harass somebody else. If they engage in too much of a conversation, then that's pretty much it. They're on their way.
Okay, if you don't mind, please, would you just go with us to the police station? Don't worry, it's just a routinary. Okay, thank you.
They probably got a million thoughts going through their head right now. They're both trying to figure out, is this real? So what should I say?
The recruits are in a foreign environment and are carrying extremely compromising information about military weapons. This is the ultimate test for a spy. In a real-life situation, facing this challenge could mean the difference between life and death.
Well, that, of course, would be every spy's nightmare. You come in, you spend all this time, you've got all this at risk, and then you get stuffed trying to get out of the country. There's probably no way to explain how that feels, but I think they've had a pretty good dose of it right there.
Hey, don't worry, you're in a police station. Come on, man. Okay?
Tutor Mike Baker is monitoring the feed from covert surveillance cameras in a van outside the jail.
What's interesting, you can see right from the very start, they're holding themselves differently. You look at their body language, you can see a lot more confidence in the way that Nicola's carrying herself. And Jenny's looking more confused. She's looking already somewhat distraught. The interrogators are going to be picking up on this.
Excusez-moi, c'est possible de avec mes cigarettes? Je voudrais mes cigarettes dans ma sac.
Jenny's asking for a cigarette. She's high maintenance. In a situation like this, you want to minimize your contact early on with the guards. You want to pull yourself together. You want to be thinking about your cover story. You want to be considering what your options are.
Okay, I guess you've got different purposes to visit Morocco.
Well, we're both here for travelling purposes, but that's it.
All right, well, that's a good start with Nicola. She's holding to her cover story. It's early days, obviously, but she's come up with a very good tactic here. Nicola has now established in the interrogator's mind she hasn't known this other girl for very long, so if something happens to Jenny, if she falls apart, then she's not going to bring Nicola into the shit with her.
Which one? We've got no pictures here. So how come we didn't take any picture?
I don't think she's thought this through. She should have left some tourist photos on there. The police are going to look at that. They're going to say, hey, excuse me, you're telling me you're a tourist. There are no pictures on this camera. What the hell's up with that?
I don't know what else to say to you.
Both were given the advice. Make sure you hide these fobs. Do not get caught with this kit. The searches being done are very thorough. Let's see what happens.
The policemen have found a fob, the digital storage device, in Jenny's bag. Now her cover story will really be tested.
You can have all your luggage and all that. You've got something with you. Can you just explain to me what's this? Do you know what's in it?
There's nothing on it, I haven't used it, because I haven't got a
Sure.
connection cable to use it.
See. Can you just get me the purpose of your visit, actually, the right purpose?
Just for travelling.
For sightseeing?
Yes.
And why precisely Tangier? Why did you choose this city?
Well, because we were in Gibraltar, we were in Spain, went to Gibraltar and then just got the ferry across, and I would quite like to go to Egypt as well.
Well done as far as Nicola goes. She's kept to her cover story. She's successfully hidden the fob. They haven't found that at this point. I think it's time to pull her out of there. Move on to the next phase of the mission.
After being detained for 8 hours, Nicola is freed. She was carrying no incriminating evidence, she didn't break her cover, and the local authorities have run out of reasons to detain her.
That was an absolute nightmare, but I'm on my way to the port just now to catch the ferry, because the mission still isn't over. But they didn't find this.
As far as you're concerned, who?
Production company, that's all
Come
I can
on.
say.
Who's the production company? I don't know any production company.
Jeez. It's just getting worse. Once she was confronted with the fob, she didn't have a way to explain it. She's in a hole she can't get out of. Now she's pretty much imploding. She's blamed it on the production company. The whole thing's falling apart. I think it's time to pull the plug.
I'm a policeman. You're a British citizen. That's why I know, Timothy. Okay.
Couple of actors in a van with some rented police uniforms. And at the end of the day, you pretty much dropped your cover like some kind of bad habit. You did the best you could. But at the end of the day, I think it's game over.
Doing this course has been an amazing experience, one that I will never forget. But it's quite possibly been one of the most awful things I've ever done. You trust nobody, you've got no safety, no security. You're paranoid all the time.
Well done, you've made the grade. When we first met you, we weren't sure that you were going to make it. But you've learned the lessons and passed the tests. You are a cut above the rest. And in real life, you would have made a good spy.
We live in the information age, with more and more intelligence being gathered by the agencies. And yet, as recent events have shown, one good human source is worth hundreds of satellites. And that's why there'll always be a job for spies.
Would I work with any of the recruits from the course? Well, I'd definitely work with Nikki. She shows a lot of potential.
Enough time, the right program, take somebody off the street. Sure, they can be turned into a spy.